The massive alien ships appeared in Earth's sky like dark clouds blocking out the sun. There were thousands of them, each one bigger than the largest human city. Their metal hulls gleamed with a cold blue light and strange symbols glowed along their sides. The ships moved in perfect formation, surrounding the planet like a net. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the small blue world below. His 4 arms crossed behind his back as he studied the planet through the viewing screen. This was supposed to be easy. His scouts had told him that humans were weak, primitive creatures who barely knew how to leave their own world. They had no real weapons, no shields, no way to fight back against the mighty Zephyrian Empire. The Admiral's skin was gray and rough like stone, and his black eyes showed no emotion. He had conquered 47 worlds in his long career. This would be number 48. He turned to his communications officer, a younger Zephyrian with nervous movements. "Send the surrender demand," Kextar ordered. His voice was deep and harsh. "Tell them they have 1 hour to give up their world or we will destroy their cities one by one." The communications officer pressed buttons on his console. Strange alien sounds filled the bridge as the message was sent down to Earth. All around them, the other ships in the fleet waited. 10,000 warships, each one armed with weapons that could level mountains. The humans didn't stand a chance. But something strange happened. Instead of fear or panic, the response from Earth came quickly. Too quickly. A calm human voice spoke through the speakers, clear and friendly. "Welcome to Earth," the voice said. "Thank you for visiting our world. Please hold while we connect you to our diplomatic team. We have been expecting you." Admiral Kextar's eyes narrowed. He looked at his communications officer, who seemed just as confused. "Expecting us?" the Admiral asked. "What do they mean, expecting us?" Before anyone could answer, the human voice continued. "We have prepared landing areas for your ships if you would like to visit the surface. We also have translation devices ready and gift packages for your crew. Our diplomatic team will be with you shortly." The bridge fell silent. In all his years of conquest, Kextar had never heard anything like this. Usually there were screams, desperate pleas for mercy, or brave but foolish threats. Sometimes there was silence as civilizations tried to hide. But never had anyone welcomed an invasion fleet like old friends. "Sir," said the communications officer, "they're sending us coordinates for landing sites. And they're asking if we prefer vegetarian meals or if we eat meat." Another officer spoke up from his station. "Admiral, they're also asking about our atmospheric needs and if we require any special accommodations." Kextar felt a strange chill run through his body. This was not normal. In 47 conquests, nothing like this had ever happened. He wondered if this was some kind of trap, but what kind of trap involved offering meals and accommodations? The human voice came back on the communication system. "Hello again. My name is Jake Morrison, and I'll be your main contact today. I'm a diplomat with the Earth Welcome Committee. With me is Lisa Chen, our head linguist. We're both very excited to meet you and learn about your culture." The Admiral's tactical officer, a female Zephyrian named Velnara, stepped forward. "Sir, our sensors show no military buildup on the planet. No ships launching, no weapons being activated. In fact, it looks like they're setting up some kind of festival in their major cities." "A festival?" Kextar repeated. "Yes, sir. Large gatherings of humans, music, food preparation. Our computers are calling it a welcome party." The Admiral walked to the front of the bridge and stared down at Earth. The small blue world looked so peaceful, spinning slowly in space. White clouds drifted across its surface, and he could see the lights of human cities twinkling like stars. Jake Morrison's voice came through the speakers again. "We know this might seem unusual, but we've been monitoring deep space for many years. We knew someone would eventually find us. We decided long ago that when visitors arrived, we would greet them as friends rather than enemies. We believe there's been enough fighting in the galaxy." "Fighting in the galaxy?" Kextar muttered. "How do they know about fighting in the galaxy?" Lisa Chen's voice joined Jake's. We've studied your language and culture through the communications we've intercepted over the years. We know you're called Zephyrians, and we know your empire spans many worlds. We also know that conquest and war have been your way of life for centuries. We'd like to offer you something different. The bridge crew looked at each other with confusion. These humans knew about the Zephyrian Empire? They had been listening to communications across space. How was that possible? Admiral, said Velnara quietly, perhaps we should be more careful. These humans might be more advanced than our scouts reported. But Jake Morrison's voice continued, warm and friendly. We've prepared comfortable quarters for any of your people who want to visit Earth. We have libraries full of information about our world, and we'd love to share our art, music, and food with you. We think you'll find Earth quite interesting. Kekstar felt anger rising in his chest. This was not how conquests were supposed to go. Send a squadron of fighters to buzz their cities, he ordered. Show them what they're dealing with. But before the fighters could launch, Lisa Chen's voice came through the speakers with what sounded like excitement. Oh, wonderful. Are you sending some of your people down to visit? We have landing pads ready and welcome committees standing by. Each of your pilots will receive a gift basket with local foods and a guidebook to Earth culture. The Admiral stopped. Gift baskets? Welcome committees? What kind of people prepared gift baskets for an invasion force? Jake Morrison added, we should mention that we've prepared accommodations for different atmospheric needs. Our scientists have been working around the clock to make sure all your people will be comfortable here. Kekstar turned to his crew. Status report. What are our sensors telling us about this planet's defenses? His sensor officer checked his screens. Sir, we're detecting no military installations, no weapons arrays, no shield generators. But there are some strange energy readings coming from the planet. Our computers can't identify them. Strange energy readings? Yes, sir. They seem to be coming from civilian areas. Almost like they're powering something very advanced, but we can't tell what. The Admiral felt uncertainty growing in his mind. In 47 conquests, he had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, his instincts were telling him that something was very wrong with this situation. But he couldn't figure out what it was. These humans were either the bravest creatures he had ever encountered, or they knew something his empire didn't. 3 days later, Captain Amy Rodriguez stood at the landing pad outside New York City, watching the first alien shuttle touch down on Earth. She wore her best uniform, but it wasn't a military one. Instead, she had on the bright blue jacket of the Earth Hospitality Corps, with a name tag that said, Welcome to Earth, in 12 different languages. Behind her, a team of 200 humans waited with excited smiles. They carried gift boxes, flowers, and tablets loaded with information about Earth culture. Some held musical instruments, ready to play songs from around the world. Others had cameras to document this historic moment. The alien shuttle was sleek and silver, about the size of a small airplane. It landed without making a sound, which impressed Amy. Human aircraft were never that quiet. Steam hissed from the bottom as the ship settled onto the concrete pad. A door opened in the side of the shuttle, and a ramp extended to the ground. Amy straightened her jacket and walked forward with her team. This was the moment they had been preparing for since the alien fleet arrived. The first alien to emerge was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His black eyes looked around nervously as he stepped onto Earth's soil. Behind him came 5 more aliens, all looking just as uncertain. Amy stepped forward with a big smile. Welcome to Earth, she called out in both English and the Zephyrian language that Lisa Chen had taught her. I'm Captain Amy Rodriguez, and we're so happy you're here. The lead alien stopped walking. He stared at Amy as if she was some kind of strange creature he had never seen before. His name, according to their translation, was Commander Zeklon, and he was supposed to be conducting a military survey of Earth's defenses. You are happy we are here? Zeklon asked in broken English. You know why we have come? Of course. Amy replied cheerfully. You've come to meet us and learn about our world. And we want to learn about yours. She gestured to her team. These are all volunteers who wanted to be here today. Everyone wanted to meet real aliens. The commander looked confused. Volunteers? Yes. When word got out that visitors from space had arrived, millions of people applied to be part of the welcome committees. We had to hold a lottery because so many people wanted to help. Dr. Peter Blake stepped forward from Amy's team. He was a scientist who specialized in studying new technologies, and he was practically bouncing with excitement. Commander Zeklon, we're absolutely fascinated by your shuttle design. The silent landing system is incredible. Would you be willing to share how it works? Zeklon looked back at his fellow aliens, who seemed just as confused as he was. You want to know about our technology? Oh yes. Peter said enthusiastically. We love learning new things. And we'd be happy to share our technology with you too. We've made some interesting discoveries in quantum computing that you might find useful. One of Amy's team members, a young woman named Kate Wilson, approached with a large gift basket. Commander, this is for you and your crew. It has chocolate, coffee beans, music from different Earth cultures, and a guidebook to our planet. The chocolate is from Belgium, which is supposed to be the best in the world. Zeklon took the basket carefully, as if it might explode. This is a gift? Of course. It's traditional for humans to give gifts to welcome visitors. The commander opened the basket and pulled out a small wrapped piece of chocolate. He sniffed it suspiciously, then looked at Kate. Is this food? The best food. Kate laughed. Try it. Chocolate makes everything better. While Zeklon cautiously tasted the chocolate, Amy led the group toward a row of vehicles waiting nearby. They weren't military vehicles, but comfortable buses with big windows and soft seats. We thought you might like a tour of the city, Amy explained. We can show you our museums, restaurants, and parks. Tonight we've arranged for you to attend a concert if you're interested. Tomorrow we have visits scheduled to our universities and research centers. One of the other aliens, a female named Yelsera, spoke up. Research centers? You would show us your research centers? Absolutely. Peter Blake answered. We believe that sharing knowledge makes everyone stronger. We'd love to show you what we're working on, and we hope you'll share your discoveries with us too. As they rode through New York City, the aliens pressed their faces against the windows like children on their first trip to the zoo. The city was full of life. Humans walked the streets, laughing and talking. Children played in parks. Street musicians performed on corners. Where are your soldiers? Zeklon asked suddenly. Amy looked puzzled. Soldiers? We have some, but they're not here. Why would we need soldiers today? For protection. For defense. Defense against what? Amy asked. You're our guests. We want you to feel safe and welcome. Yelsera pointed out the window at a group of humans who had gathered to wave at the alien visitors. Those humans are not afraid of us. Afraid? No way. Kate Wilson laughed. Everyone is excited to meet you. You're celebrities. The whole world is watching this visit. The bus stopped at Central Park, where thousands of humans had gathered for an impromptu welcome festival. There were food trucks, street performers, and families having picnics. When the aliens stepped off the bus, the crowd cheered and applauded. Children ran up to offer the aliens drawings they had made of spaceships and aliens. Musicians played songs, and dancers performed traditional dances from around the world. Food vendors offered free samples of everything from pizza to ice cream. Zeklon stood in the middle of it all, turning slowly in circles as he tried to take everything in. I do not understand, he said to Amy. Your people are celebrating our arrival. But we came here to conquer your world. Amy's smile never faded. We know, she said simply. But we decided to try something different. Instead of fighting you, we thought we'd try to become friends with you. Friends? Sure. Fighting is exhausting and expensive, and somebody always gets hurt. Friendship is much more fun. Plus, think of all the amazing things we could learn from each other. Dr. Blake joined them, practically vibrating with excitement. "Commander, I've been talking with your engineer about your faster-than-light drive system. The mathematics are fascinating. And she seems very interested in our quantum entanglement communication arrays." Zeklon looked at the crowd of celebrating humans, then at the eager faces of Amy and her team. "This is not how conquests are supposed to work," he muttered. "Maybe," Amy said with a shrug, "but it's definitely more fun this way." As the day went on, the aliens found themselves drawn into the celebration. They tried different foods, listened to music, and even learned some basic dance steps from enthusiastic human children. Yelsera discovered she loved ice cream, while another alien became fascinated with jazz music. By evening, as they prepared to return to their shuttle, Zeklon realized something strange had happened. For the first time in years, he had completely forgotten about warfare, conquest, and military objectives. Instead, he had spent the day learning about art, music, food, and science. As they boarded their shuttle, Kate Wilson ran up with another gift basket. "This one's for your friends back on the ship," she called out. "And tell them we'd love to meet them too." Flying back to the fleet, Zeklon sat quietly while his team chattered excitedly about everything they had seen and done. When Yelsera asked him what he was thinking, he gave her an honest answer. "I am thinking," he said slowly, "that these humans are either the most clever enemies we have ever faced, or the most dangerous friends." 2 weeks after the first alien visit to Earth, businessman Carl Matthews floated through the corridors of the Zephyrian flagship in a specially designed spacesuit. He carried a briefcase full of trade samples and wore the biggest smile anyone had ever seen in space. Carl had started his career selling farm equipment in Iowa, but he had always dreamed of bigger things. When aliens showed up with a whole fleet of potential customers, he saw the opportunity of a lifetime. Within days, he had organized the Earth Trading Consortium and gotten himself appointed as the first human commercial representative to the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Kekstar watched through his office window as Carl chatted with a group of alien engineers. The human was showing them something on a small device that made them all lean in closer with interest. Whatever it was, it had completely captured their attention. "Sir," said Commander Velnara as she entered the Admiral's office, "we need to talk about the human trading situation." Kekstar turned away from the window. "What about it?" "It's getting out of control. Half our ships are now requesting regular supply runs from Earth. The humans are providing us with things we never knew we wanted, and our crews are becoming dependent on them." The Admiral frowned. "Dependent how?" Velnara activated a holographic display that showed statistics from across the fleet. "Food supplies, sir. The humans have been sending up fresh meals that our crews find much more appealing than standard rations. Also entertainment data, recreational items, and something they call coffee that has become extremely popular." "Coffee? A stimulant beverage, sir. Much more effective than our standard energy supplements, and apparently it tastes much better. Some of our ship commanders are now refusing to start their duty shifts without it." Kekstar studied the statistics with growing concern. "How many ships are involved in this trading?" "All of them, sir. Every single ship in the fleet has established some form of trade relationship with the humans." At that moment, Carl Matthews floated into the office with his usual cheerful energy. "Admiral. Commander. Perfect timing. I've got some exciting news about our latest trade agreements." Kekstar crossed his forearms. "Mr. Matthews, I need to understand what is happening to my fleet." Carl pulled out his tablet and showed them a complex chart. "Well, Admiral, it's really quite simple. Your people have been living on processed food and working constantly for years. They were hungry for something better, and we're providing it. Fresh food, entertainment, luxury items, and new technologies that make life more comfortable. And what do you want in return?" Velnara asked suspiciously. "Nothing too big," Carl said with a casual wave of his hand. "Some of your amazing metal alloys, a few energy crystals, access to your faster-than-light communication systems. Basic trade stuff." The Admiral realized something important. "You're getting our military technology." "Oh no, no, no," Carl laughed. "We're not interested in weapons. We want the good stuff. Your medical scanners are incredible for treating diseases. Your energy crystals could power our cities cleanly for centuries. And your communication systems could help us stay in touch with our friends across the galaxy. Velnara looked at her tablet. Sir, I'm also seeing reports that our crew members are requesting extended shore leave on Earth. Some have asked for permanent transfers to work with human researchers. Permanent transfers? Kekstar's voice rose. Carl nodded enthusiastically. Oh yes. Dr. Blake and his team have set up joint research projects with some of your scientists. They're working on amazing things together. Faster computers, better medical treatments, new energy sources. It's like combining the best of both our civilizations. The Admiral felt a headache coming on. This was not how military campaigns were supposed to work. Mr. Matthews, you do realize we came here to conquer your planet? Sure, Carl said, waving his hand dismissively. But that's so old-fashioned. Why conquer when you can cooperate? Think about it, Admiral. Conquest means you have to fight, occupy territories, deal with resistance movements, spend enormous amounts of resources on military control. Trade means everybody gets what they want and everyone's happy. Velnara showed the Admiral another chart. Sir, our supply costs have decreased by 40% since we started trading with the humans. Our crew satisfaction ratings have increased by 60%. And our equipment maintenance needs have dropped significantly because the humans keep giving us better replacement parts. Better replacement parts? Carl grinned. Your technology is impressive, Admiral, but it's also really complex and expensive to maintain. We've been developing simplified versions that work just as well but cost much less and break down much less often. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not focused on making everything into a weapon. The Admiral walked to his window and looked out at his fleet. He could see human shuttles moving between the ships like busy insects. Each shuttle carried trade goods, food, entertainment, and people going back and forth. His mighty invasion fleet was starting to look more like a space marketplace. Mr. Matthews, he said slowly, what happens if I order my fleet to attack Earth tomorrow? Carl's smile never wavered. Well, Admiral, that would certainly be your choice. But I think you'd have some problems. What kind of problems? For starters, about 30% of your crew members have human friends now. Another 20% are involved in joint research projects that they're really excited about. And almost everyone is looking forward to their next shipment of Earth food and entertainment. Velnara added quietly, Sir, we've also received reports that some ship commanders are concerned about attacking a planet that has been so generous to their crews. Carl pulled up another chart on his tablet. Plus, Admiral, you'd be destroying your own supply lines. Your fleet is now running more efficiently than it has in years, your people are happier than they've been in decades, and your costs are way down. From a purely business perspective, attacking Earth would be a terrible investment. The Admiral stared out at space, watching a human cargo ship dock with one of his cruisers. The human ship was tiny compared to the Zephyrian vessel, but the alien crew was greeting it like it carried precious treasure. There's something else you should know, Carl said, his voice becoming more serious. We've been analyzing your empire's economic situation. You guys are in trouble. What do you mean? Carl showed them a comprehensive report. Your empire has been funding itself through conquest for centuries, but you're running out of planets worth conquering. The costs of maintaining control over your territories keep going up, while the resources you're getting from them keep going down. You're heading for economic collapse within 50 years. Velnara studied the report with growing alarm. These numbers, how did you get this information? It's all publicly available if you know where to look, Carl said. Your empire's communication networks carry a lot of data, and we're pretty good at analyzing economic trends. The Zephyrian Empire is in the same situation as a lot of historical empires on Earth. You've grown too big, too expensive, and too dependent on constant expansion. The Admiral felt something cold in his stomach. And you're telling us this because? Because we like you guys. Carl said with genuine warmth. You're smart, you're hardworking, and you're great to do business with. We don't want to see your civilization collapse. We want to help you find a better way forward. A better way. Trade, cooperation, shared research, cultural exchange. All the things we've been doing for the past 2 weeks, but on a much bigger scale. Instead of conquering planets, you could become the galaxy's greatest trading civilization. Instead of forcing people to join your empire, you could invite them to become your partners. Velnara looked at the Admiral. Sir, the economic projections are accurate. We've been seeing signs of strain across the empire for years. Carl closed his tablet and smiled. Admiral, I know this is a lot to think about. But consider this, in 2 weeks of peaceful trade, your fleet has become more efficient and your people have become happier than they were in years of military campaigns. Maybe it's time to try something new. As Carl floated out of the office, Admiral Kekstar continued staring out at his fleet. For the first time in his long military career, he was beginning to wonder if there might be a better way to build an empire than with weapons and fear. Commander Rick Stone sat in his small office aboard the space station that orbited Earth, typing rapidly on his computer. As head of the Cultural Exchange Monitoring Division, his job was to keep track of how human culture was affecting the alien fleet. What he was discovering worried him, excited him, and amazed him all at the same time. Rick had been a military intelligence officer for 15 years before the aliens arrived. He was used to studying enemy movements, weapons capabilities, and battle strategies. But nothing in his training had prepared him for what he was seeing now. His computer screen showed reports from across the Zephyrian fleet, and every single report told the same strange story. Human culture was spreading through the alien ships like a friendly virus, changing everything it touched. On the flagship, Admiral Kekstar's personal chef had learned to make pizza after trying a slice during a trade meeting. Now pizza was being served in the officers' mess hall, and half the command staff had developed strong opinions about different toppings. On Cruiser Group 7, the night shift had started watching human television shows during their break periods. The most popular show was apparently a cooking competition, and several alien engineers had requested permission to visit Earth's culinary schools. On Destroyer Squadron 12, the weapon maintenance crews had started listening to human music while they worked. Their productivity had increased by 20%, and their error rate had dropped significantly. The squadron commander had officially requested a supply of human audio equipment for all his ships. Rick leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. In his military career, he had seen armies fall apart due to poor morale, bad leadership, or supply problems. But he had never seen an invasion force disintegrate because the soldiers were having too much fun. His assistant, Lieutenant Janet Parker, knocked on his office door. "Commander, you need to see the latest reports from the alien ships." Rick waved her in. "More cultural contamination." "Sir, it's beyond contamination now. It's a complete transformation." Janet handed him a thick file. 3 Zephyrian ships have officially requested permission to establish permanent bases on Earth. 2 others want to set up joint research stations. And 1 ship has asked if they can participate in the Olympics. The Olympics? Apparently they saw footage of the games and think competitive sports look like fun. They want to create an interstellar athletic competition. Rick opened the file and started reading. The reports were incredible. Alien soldiers were learning human languages, human cooking, human art forms, and human recreational activities. Some had started romantic relationships with humans. Others had applied to attend human universities. But the most interesting report came from Dr. Monica Davis, a psychologist who had been studying the effects of prolonged human contact on Zephyrian military discipline. "Janet, get Dr. Davis on the communication system. I need to talk to her immediately." A few minutes later, Monica's face appeared on Rick's screen. She was calling from the Zephyrian flagship, where she had been living for the past week as part of a cultural exchange program. "Rick! Perfect timing. I was just about to send you my latest analysis." "Monica, what's happening up there?" "My reports say that military discipline is breaking down across the entire fleet." Monica laughed. "Breaking down? Rick, that depends on your perspective. From a traditional military standpoint, yes, discipline is falling apart. But from a human standpoint, something much more interesting is happening. Explain. The Zephyrian military system is based on rigid hierarchy, constant competition, and fear of punishment. It's efficient for conquest, but it's terrible for morale. These soldiers have been fighting wars for their entire lives, following orders without question, living on terrible food, and never having any fun. Rick looked at his computer screen, which showed a video of alien soldiers learning to play basketball with human crew members. And now they're discovering that life can be enjoyable. They're making friends, learning new skills, eating good food, and experiencing entertainment for the first time. Rick, most of these aliens have never had a hobby before. They've never had a favorite food or a favorite song or a friend from another species. But Monica, they're soldiers in an invasion fleet. Aren't they supposed to be focused on military objectives? Monica's expression became serious. That's the thing, Rick. They're starting to question those military objectives. When you give someone a taste of peace, friendship, and good food, it becomes very hard to convince them that conquest and war are necessary. Rick felt a chill of realization. You're saying that human culture is turning them against their own military system. Not against it, exactly. But they're starting to see alternatives. Yesterday, I sat in on a conversation between a group of Zephyrian engineers and some human scientists. The aliens were talking about how much they enjoyed working on creative projects instead of weapons systems. They were excited about building things that help people instead of things that destroy planets. Janet leaned over Rick's shoulder to listen. Dr. Davis, what about their loyalty to the Empire? That's complicated, Monica replied. They're still loyal to their people and their civilization. But they're beginning to understand that there might be better ways to serve their empire than through constant warfare. Rick pulled up another report on his computer. Monica, I'm seeing reports that some ships are having discipline problems. Soldiers refusing orders, officers questioning commands, entire crews requesting transfers to non-military duties. That's happening, but it's not what you think. These aren't mutinies or rebellions. These are people who have discovered that they prefer cooperation to conflict. They've learned that working together is more satisfying than fighting. Monica paused and looked directly into the camera. Rick, these aliens are exhausted. They've been at war for generations. They've conquered dozens of worlds, but they've never had time to enjoy the fruits of their victories. Human culture is showing them what they've been missing. And what's that? Joy. Friendship. Art. Music. Love. Food that actually tastes good. The simple pleasure of learning something new just because it's interesting. All the things that make life worth living instead of just surviving. Rick thought about the implications. Monica, if human culture continues to spread through their fleet at this rate, what happens to their invasion plan? Monica smiled. Rick, I don't think they have an invasion plan anymore. Half their soldiers want to become artists or chefs or scientists. The other half want to go home and share what they've learned with their families. Nobody wants to destroy the planet that gave them chocolate and jazz music. Lieutenant Parker spoke up. Dr. Davis, is this sustainable? Can this cultural change last, or will they eventually return to their military mindset? That's the million-dollar question, Janet. But I think the change is deeper than we initially realized. These aliens aren't just adopting human customs. They're discovering parts of themselves that their military culture never allowed them to explore. They're becoming more complete individuals. Rick looked at his reports again. According to his data, the Zephyrian fleet was still combat capable, but their willingness to use that capability was decreasing every day. More importantly, their desire to find non-violent solutions to problems was increasing rapidly. Monica, I need your professional opinion. In your assessment, what's the long-term outcome of this cultural exchange? Monica was quiet for a moment, thinking. Rick, I think we're witnessing the end of the Zephyrian Empire as a military force and the beginning of something entirely new. They're not becoming humans, but they're becoming something much more like us. A civilization that values creativity, cooperation, and peaceful growth over conquest and domination. After ending the call, Rick sat quietly in his office, staring at his computer screen. The reports continued to flow in from across the alien fleet. More soldiers requesting permission to study human art forms. More officers asking about establishing permanent cultural exchange programs. More entire ships expressing interest in abandoning military missions in favor of scientific research. Janet stood beside his desk. "Commander, what do we do with all this information?" Rick thought for a long moment. "We document everything, and we prepare for the possibility that we're about to witness the first peaceful transformation of an entire military empire in galactic history. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Rick looked out his window at the alien ships scattered across Earth's orbit. Each ship now had human visitors aboard, and many had started painting colorful designs on their hulls in imitation of human art styles. "Janet," he said finally, "I think it might be the best thing that's ever happened to this galaxy." Intelligence analyst Monica Davis stood before the assembled Zephyrian command staff aboard the flagship, holding a tablet that contained information that would change everything. The room was filled with the Empire's top military leaders, including Admiral Kekstar, Commander Velnara, and a dozen other high-ranking officers. They had requested this meeting to understand what humans really knew about their civilization. Monica looked around the room, seeing the gray-skinned aliens in their military uniforms sitting stiffly in their chairs. These were warriors who had conquered worlds, but today they looked nervous and uncertain. She took a deep breath and began. "Honored commanders," she said in carefully practiced Zephyrian, "I want to thank you for allowing me to share this information. What I'm about to tell you may be difficult to hear, but it's important that you understand the truth." Admiral Kekstar leaned forward. "Ms. Davis, we need to know how much Earth knows about the Zephyrian Empire." Monica activated her tablet and displayed a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Zephyrian territories, while blue lines showed their communication networks and trade routes. The aliens stared at the display with growing alarm as they realized how detailed and accurate it was. "We know everything," Monica said simply. "We've been monitoring your empire for 43 years." The room fell silent. Commander Velnara was the first to speak. 43 years. But you've only had space flight for about 60 years, yes. But we've been listening to space communications much longer than that." Monica changed the display to show a timeline. "In 1982, we detected the first Zephyrian transmissions. By 1990, we had learned your language. By 2000, we understood your political system. By 2010, we had mapped your entire empire." Admiral Kekstar stood up abruptly. "If you knew about us for so long, why didn't you prepare defenses? Why didn't you build weapons?" Monica smiled sadly. "Because we understood something about your empire that you might not realize yourselves. Admiral, you're not the villains of this galaxy. You're its victims." The aliens looked at each other with confusion. "Victims?" Velnara asked. Monica changed the display again, showing economic data, population statistics, and resource allocation across the Zephyrian Empire. "Your civilization has been trapped in a cycle of conquest for over 800 years. You conquer worlds because you need their resources to fund your military. You need your military because you have to control the worlds you've conquered. You have to control those worlds because without them, your empire would collapse economically." Captain Tony Williams entered the room at that moment, carrying additional data tablets. He was a human military strategist who had been working with Monica to analyze the Zephyrian situation. "Admiral," Tony said as he distributed the tablets, "we've run economic projections for your empire. The numbers are not good." The alien commanders began studying the data on their tablets. Monica watched their expressions change from confusion to concern to alarm as they realized what the numbers meant. "Your empire is dying," Monica said gently. "Not from external threats, but from internal collapse. The cost of maintaining military control over 200 worlds is bankrupting your civilization. Your people are exhausted from constant warfare. Your resources are being depleted faster than you can acquire new ones." Admiral Kekstar stared at his tablet. "These projections, they show total economic collapse within 50 years. The results are extraordinary. Within 50 years, you could be the wealthiest and most influential civilization in the galaxy, with willing partners instead of conquered subjects. Admiral Kextar was quiet for a long time, staring at the holographic displays. Finally, he spoke. Ms. Davis, you are telling us that our entire way of life is wrong. Monica shook her head. No, Admiral. I'm telling you that your way of life is incomplete. Zephyrians are brilliant engineers, skilled organizers, and natural leaders. Those are incredible strengths. But for 8 centuries, you've only used those strengths for warfare. Imagine what you could accomplish if you used them for creation instead of destruction. And if we refuse? Asked Velnara. If we choose to continue with our invasion plans? Tony answered honestly. Then you'll destroy yourselves within 50 years, with or without conquering Earth. Your empire is already past the point of sustainable expansion. Adding one more world won't solve your fundamental economic problems. Monica stepped closer to the Admiral. But if you choose to work with us, we can help you transform your empire into something stronger and more sustainable than it's ever been. Not just a military force, but a true civilization that your people can be proud of. The room fell silent as the Zephyrian commanders absorbed this information. Everything they had believed about their empire, their mission, and their future was being challenged by economic data that they couldn't argue with. Finally, Admiral Kextar stood up. Ms. Davis, Captain Williams, you have given us much to consider. This information changes everything. We hope so, Admiral, Monica said softly. Because your people deserve better than endless war. And so does the rest of the galaxy. As the meeting ended, Monica gathered her materials and prepared to leave. She had done her job, showing the Zephyrian leadership the truth about their situation. Now it was up to them to decide what to do with that knowledge. But as she walked through the corridors of the flagship, she saw Zephyrian soldiers laughing with human visitors, alien engineers working alongside human scientists, and crew members excitedly discussing the cultural exchange programs they wanted to join. The leadership might still be deciding, but the people had already made their choice. Dr. Alice Green stood in the main conference room of the Earth Space Council, facing the largest gathering of alien and human leaders in galactic history. Around the curved table sat Admiral Kextar and his senior staff, representatives from 12 other worlds in the Zephyrian Empire, and the top diplomats from Earth's major nations. For the past week, Alice had been working almost non-stop with her team of economists, sociologists, and political scientists to prepare a comprehensive analysis of the Zephyrian Empire's situation. What they had discovered was both troubling and hopeful. Thank you all for coming, Alice began, looking around the room at the mixture of humans and various alien species. Today we need to make some very important decisions about the future of this galaxy. Admiral Kextar sat stiffly in his chair, his 4 arms crossed in front of him. Beside him, Commander Velnara looked equally tense. These past weeks had been the most challenging of their military careers, not because of any battle, but because everything they believed about their empire was being questioned. Alice activated the large holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a detailed map of the Zephyrian Empire, with each conquered world marked in red and detailed statistics floating beside them. Admiral, honored delegates, what we're seeing here is an empire in crisis. Not because of external enemies, but because of internal problems that have been building for centuries. She highlighted several worlds on the map. These planets are in open rebellion against Zephyrian rule. These others are showing serious signs of civil unrest. Resource production is declining across your empire, while the cost of military control continues to increase. A delegate from the world of Tharsis, a blue-skinned humanoid named Counselor Zek Moore, leaned forward. Dr. Green, our world has been under Zephyrian control for 200 years. We have seen our resources stripped away while our people live in poverty. What alternatives are you proposing? Alice changed the display to show economic projections. Counselor, we're proposing something that has never been tried on a galactic scale. Instead of an empire based on conquest and control, we want to create a confederation based on voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. Admiral Kextar spoke up. Dr. Green, the Zephyrian Empire has existed for 800 years. Our military strength has brought order to dozens of worlds. You are asking us to abandon everything that has made us powerful. No, Admiral, Alice replied. We're asking you to use your power differently. Your people are brilliant organizers, skilled engineers, and natural leaders. Those abilities could be just as valuable for building trade networks and cooperative partnerships as they have been for military conquest. She showed new projections on the display. Look at these numbers. In just 1 month of peaceful cooperation between Earth and your fleet, both sides have benefited enormously. Trade volume has increased, technological advancement has accelerated, and satisfaction levels have risen dramatically. Commander Velnara studied the data carefully. These projections show significant economic growth, but how do we maintain security without military control? Dr. Peter Blake, Earth's chief technology advisor, joined the presentation. Commander, security doesn't have to come from fear. It can come from mutual dependence and shared benefits. When worlds are prospering through cooperation, they have strong incentives to maintain peaceful relationships. Counselor Zekmore from Tharsis spoke again. Dr. Blake, that sounds idealistic, but what about worlds that refuse to cooperate? What about aggressive species that might threaten peaceful worlds? Alice nodded. Counselor, that's a valid concern. We're not proposing to eliminate all military forces. We're proposing to change their primary mission from conquest to protection. Instead of armies that conquer worlds, you could have forces that protect trade routes, respond to emergencies, and defend against genuine threats. Admiral Kekstar was quiet for a long moment, studying the projections. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Green, these economic models are impressive, but they assume that all parties will act in good faith. What if some worlds choose to exploit this cooperation for their own benefit? That's where the Confederation structure becomes important, Alice replied. Instead of one central empire controlling everything, you create a network of independent worlds that choose to work together. Each world retains its sovereignty but agrees to certain standards for trade, cooperation, and conflict resolution. She changed the display to show a proposed government structure. Think of it as a galactic United Nations with real economic incentives for participation. Worlds that cooperate get access to advanced technology, profitable trade relationships, and mutual defense agreements. Worlds that choose aggression find themselves isolated and economically disadvantaged. Dr. Blake added, we've seen this work on Earth. Our most prosperous regions are those with the strongest cooperative relationships. Competition exists, but it's economic competition, not military conquest. A new voice joined the conversation. Captain Yelnara, who had been one of the first Zephyrian officers to embrace human cultural exchange, stood up. Admiral, I have served in the military for 25 years. I have participated in the conquest of 6 worlds. And I have never seen our people as happy as they have been during these past weeks of cooperation with humans. Admiral Kekstar looked at his subordinate with surprise. Captain. Sir, our crew members are excited about their work for the first time in years. They're learning new skills, forming friendships, and discovering talents they never knew they had. The question isn't whether this cooperation model can work. The question is whether we're brave enough to try it. Alice sensed that this was a crucial moment. Admiral, we understand that this is an enormous decision. We're not asking you to change everything overnight. We're proposing a gradual transition that allows you to test these new approaches while maintaining the stability of your current systems. She showed a timeline on the display. Phase 1, establish voluntary trade partnerships with interested worlds. Phase 2, create joint research and cultural exchange programs. Phase 3, gradually reduce military control over cooperative worlds. Phase 4, establish the formal confederation structure. Counselor Zekmore leaned back in his chair. Dr. Green, this proposal would give my world its independence after 200 years of conquest. Why should we trust that the Zephyrians won't simply change their minds and reconquer us later? Admiral Kekstar answered before Alice could respond. Counselor, because we're beginning to understand that conquest is an inferior method of building strength. These humans have shown us that willing allies are far more valuable than conquered subjects. Alice smiled. Admiral, that's exactly right. Conquered worlds are a constant drain on resources because you have to force them to cooperate. Allied worlds contribute willingly because they benefit from the relationship. Commander Velnara spoke up. Dr. Green, assuming we decide to pursue this confederation model, what role would Earth play in the new structure? Earth would be one member among many, Alice replied. We don't want to lead this confederation. We want to participate in it as equals. Each world would have representation based on its population and economic contribution, but no single world would dominate the others. The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed the implications of the proposal. Alice could see the internal struggle on Admiral Kekstar's face. Everything in his military training told him that strength came from control and dominance. But the evidence from the past month suggested that cooperation might actually be a superior strategy. Finally, the Admiral stood up. Dr. Green, members of the Council, I need time to discuss this proposal with my senior staff and with the leadership back in the Empire. This is not a decision that can be made quickly. Of course, Admiral, Alice said. But while you're considering the proposal, I'd like to suggest that we continue and expand the current cooperation programs. Let the results speak for themselves. As the meeting ended, Alice gathered her materials and reflected on what had just happened. For the first time in galactic history, a military empire was seriously considering transforming itself into a peaceful confederation. The outcome was far from certain, but the conversation had begun. And sometimes, Alice thought, that was the most important step of all. The rebellion began on a Tuesday morning when Admiral Kekstar announced his decision to the assembled fleet commanders. Half of his officers supported the proposal to transform the Zephyrian Empire into a peaceful confederation. The other half considered it treason. Captain Velnara stood in the communications center of the Luna base, watching the split happen in real time across her displays. Green dots represented ships that supported the peace initiative, red dots showed vessels that remained loyal to the traditional military empire, and yellow dots indicated ships that were still undecided. Beside her, human coordinator Steve Baker monitored the communications between the various alien factions. As Earth's primary liaison for military affairs, Steve had seen conflicts before, but never anything quite like this. Captain, Steve said, pointing to his screen, it looks like Admiral Kekstar has about 4,000 ships supporting him. The traditionalist faction under Admiral Mortax has roughly 3,000. The remaining ships seem to be waiting to see what happens. Velnara studied the tactical display with professional interest. After weeks of cultural exchange with humans, she had begun to see military situations differently. Instead of thinking about conquest and destruction, she found herself looking for ways to resolve conflicts without violence. Mr. Baker, in human history, how have military splits like this usually been resolved? Steve grimaced. Not well, I'm afraid. Usually through civil war. But there might be another way. What do you mean? Before Steve could answer, emergency alarms began sounding throughout Luna base. On the main display, red indicators showed that Admiral Mortax's traditionalist fleet was moving into attack formation, targeting both Earth and Admiral Kekstar's progressive ships. All human personnel to emergency stations, came the announcement over the base communication system. This is not a drill. Velnara felt a familiar tension in her muscles as her military training kicked in. But instead of the excitement she used to feel before battle, she now felt only sadness. These were her people preparing to fight each other, and the reason for the conflict was whether they should choose peace or war. Steve was already on his communication headset, talking rapidly to someone on Earth. Yes, I understand. Authorization received. Initiating Protocol 7. Protocol 7? Velnara asked. Something we hoped we'd never have to use, Steve replied. He entered a complex code into his console, and the display changed to show new energy readings emanating from Earth's surface. On Admiral Mortax's flagship, the traditionalist leader was preparing to demonstrate Zephyrian military superiority. He stood on his bridge, surrounded by officers who shared his belief that the Empire's strength came from conquest and fear. Target the human homeworld, he commanded. A single decisive strike will end this foolishness about peaceful cooperation. But as his weapons officer began targeting Earth, something impossible appeared on their sensors. A massive energy field had activated around the planet, creating a barrier that their computers couldn't analyze. "Sir," the weapons officer reported with confusion, "our targeting systems can't penetrate that field. It's like nothing in our databases." Admiral Mortax stepped closer to the display. "What is that?" "Unknown technology, sir. Energy output is beyond our measurement capabilities." At the same moment, similar energy barriers appeared around Admiral Kekstar's progressive fleet, protecting them from attack. The traditionalist ships found themselves unable to target either Earth or their former allies. On Luna Base, Steve explained to the amazed Velnara what was happening. "Captain, those defense systems have been in place for 30 years. We built them after we first detected your Empire's communications and realized that someone might eventually try to conquer Earth. But your energy readings suggested primitive technology. That was intentional misdirection. We wanted any potential invaders to underestimate our capabilities." Steve showed her detailed specifications on his screen. "Those shields can withstand anything short of a supernova. But more importantly, they can protect friendly vessels as well as our planet." Velnara stared at the display in amazement. "You could have destroyed our entire fleet when we first arrived." "Yes, but that would have solved nothing. Your Empire would have sent another fleet, and another, until either we were conquered or your civilization was destroyed. We wanted to find a better solution." On his flagship, Admiral Mortax realized that his military advantage had suddenly disappeared. His ships were still functional, but they couldn't attack their targets. He found himself in the unprecedented situation of having military superiority but being unable to use it. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the human planet." "Put it through." Marine Colonel Janet Parker's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. "Admiral Mortax, this is Colonel Parker of the Earth Defense Force. Your weapons are currently ineffective due to our defensive systems. However, we'd like to offer you an alternative to continued conflict." "What alternative?" Mortax demanded. "Safe passage to any destination you choose, along with full resupply and provisions for your journey. We don't want to fight you, Admiral. We just want to protect the beings who have chosen peace." Velnara listened to the exchange with growing hope. "Mr. Baker, are you offering the traditionalist faction a way to leave without losing face?" "Exactly. We've learned that sometimes the best way to win a conflict is to give your opponents a dignified exit strategy." Admiral Mortax found himself in an impossible position. He couldn't attack his enemies, but he also couldn't accept defeat. However, the human offer provided a third option that preserved his honor while avoiding a destructive civil war. On Admiral Kekstar's flagship, the progressive leader was watching the same developments with relief and admiration. The humans had managed to protect both Earth and his ships without firing a single shot. More importantly, they had offered his traditionalist opponents a peaceful resolution that allowed everyone to maintain their dignity. Colonel Parker's voice continued over the communications channel. "Admiral Mortax, we understand that you and your officers believe in the traditional Zephyrian way of life. We respect that choice. There are many unclaimed regions of the galaxy where you could establish territories according to your preferred methods." Velnara realized what the humans were doing. They're giving the traditionalists permission to leave and start their own empire elsewhere. "That's right," Steve confirmed. "Sometimes the best solution to an ideological split is to let both sides pursue their preferred paths separately." For 3 hours, Admiral Mortax consulted with his officers and considered his options. Finally, he made his decision. "Human Colonel," he announced over the communication system, "the traditional Zephyrian fleet accepts your offer of safe passage. We will depart this system and establish our own territories in the Outer Rim." Within hours, the split was complete. 3,000 ships under Admiral Mortax prepared to leave for distant regions of the galaxy, where they could continue their military traditions without interfering with the peace initiative. The remaining 7,000 ships, along with Earth, began the process of establishing the first interstellar confederation based on voluntary cooperation. As the traditionalist fleet departed, Steve Baker turned to Captain Velnara. "Captain, in human history, we've learned that you can't force people to accept peace. Sometimes you have to let them choose their own path, even if you disagree with it. Velnara watched the ships disappearing into hyperspace and felt a mixture of sadness and relief. "Mr. Baker, do you think they'll be successful in the Outer Rim?" Steve considered the question carefully. "Maybe, for a while. But the economic problems that plague the current empire will eventually catch up with them. When that happens, they'll either adapt or collapse. Either way, the choice will be theirs." Velnara looked at the remaining ships on her display, now working together to establish supply lines and communication networks for the new Confederation. "And us? We get to find out if peace and cooperation really can be stronger than conquest and fear," Steve replied with a smile. "I think we're going to discover that they are." As night fell over Luna Base, Velnara reflected on the day's events. Without firing a single shot, the humans had prevented a devastating civil war, given both sides what they needed, and preserved the peace initiative that would reshape the galaxy. It was, she realized, the most impressive military victory she had ever witnessed. 1 year later, Ambassador Luke Harrison stood on the observation deck of the new Terran Confederation headquarters, watching ships from 47 different worlds dock at the massive space station that orbited Jupiter. Each vessel carried delegates, traders, scientists, and artists from across the galaxy, all coming together for the first anniversary celebration of the Terran Accords. Luke had been a career diplomat for 20 years, but he had never imagined he would one day be signing treaties with alien civilizations. The transformation of the galaxy had happened faster than anyone thought possible, and the results had exceeded everyone's expectations. Through the transparent walls of the observation deck, he could see the former Zephyrian flagship, now painted with colorful murals created by artists from 12 different worlds. Admiral Kekstar had insisted on keeping his old ship as the headquarters for the Confederation Defense Force, though its mission had changed completely from conquest to protection of trade routes and emergency response. Ambassador Harrison, came a familiar voice behind him. Luke turned to see Dr. Nancy Foster, whose research station had become the symbol of cooperative scientific advancement in the new Confederation. "The ceremony is about to begin." Luke nodded and followed Nancy toward the main assembly hall, where representatives from 47 worlds were gathering to sign the permanent charter for the Terran Confederation. The hall was enormous, with seating arranged in concentric circles to emphasize that no single world dominated the others. As they entered the hall, Luke marveled at the diversity of beings present. There were the gray-skinned Zephyrians, the blue-skinned humanoids from Tharsis, crystalline creatures from the Silicon worlds, gaseous beings in containment suits from the Outer Rim, and dozens of other species that had joined the Confederation over the past year. At the center of the hall sat a simple table with the charter document, written in 47 different languages and formats to accommodate the various species. Admiral Kekstar, now serving as Earth's Minister of Interstellar Relations, stood beside the table with the ceremonial signing device. "Friends," Kekstar began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation system, "1 year ago, I arrived at Earth with a fleet of 10,000 ships, intending to conquer a world I believed to be weak and primitive. Today, I stand before you as proof that the greatest strength comes not from weapons, but from the willingness to change." The assembled delegates listened intently as the former military commander continued. "The humans taught us something that 800 years of conquest had never shown us. They taught us that making enemies is easy, but making friends is far more powerful." Luke watched the ceremony with deep satisfaction. The past year had been challenging as they worked out the details of interstellar cooperation, but the results spoke for themselves. Trade between member worlds had increased by 400%. Scientific advancement had accelerated dramatically through shared research. And most importantly, for the first time in centuries, there was genuine peace across a significant portion of the galaxy. Dr. Foster stepped forward to address the assembly. "When we first detected the Zephyrian Empire's communications 43 years ago, we faced a choice. We could prepare for war, or we could prepare for peace. Today, we celebrate the wisdom of choosing peace." She gestured toward the displays around the hall that showed the Confederation's achievements. 47 worlds working together. Trade routes protected by former enemies who have become allies. Scientific discoveries shared freely between civilizations. Cultural exchange programs that have enriched all our societies. Admiral Kekstar picked up the signing device and looked around the hall. "But perhaps the most important achievement is what we have shown to the rest of the galaxy. We have proven that cooperation is stronger than conquest, that voluntary alliance is more stable than forced submission, and that diversity of thought and culture makes us all stronger. One by one, the representatives from each world came forward to sign the charter. Luke watched as former enemies became permanent allies, as species that had never met before agreed to work together, and as the dream of peaceful cooperation became a legal reality. When it was Earth's turn, Luke stepped forward and signed the document with a steady hand. As he did, he thought about all the humans who had worked to make this moment possible. Jake Morrison and Lisa Chen, who had greeted the alien fleet with friendship instead of fear. Amy Rodriguez and her hospitality teams, who had shown the aliens what human culture could offer. Carl Matthews and his traders, who had proven that cooperation was more profitable than conquest. As the ceremony concluded, Luke found himself standing beside Captain Velnara, who now served as the Confederation's chief of operations. Together, they watched through the observation windows as fireworks from a dozen different worlds lit up the space around Jupiter. "Captain," Luke said, "when your fleet first arrived, did you ever imagine this outcome?" Velnara's expression was thoughtful. "Ambassador, in all honesty, I never imagined anything like this was possible. We had been at war for so long that we had forgotten there could be any other way of life. And now I understand why your species chose the path of peace. It is much more difficult than conquest, but the rewards are far greater." She gestured toward the celebrating crowds in the hall behind them. "Look at what we have built together. No empire in galactic history has ever been this prosperous, this stable, or this happy." Luke nodded in agreement. "The funny thing is, we never really defeated your empire. We just offered it a better way to succeed." As the celebration continued into the night, Luke reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Earth had faced invasion by a vastly superior military force, but instead of responding with weapons, they had responded with hospitality, trade offers, cultural exchange, and economic analysis. They had shown the Zephyrians that their empire was unsustainable, but more importantly, they had offered a viable alternative. Instead of destroying the alien fleet, they had transformed it into the foundation of a new kind of interstellar community. 6 months after the charter signing, Luke received a message that brought the story full circle. Admiral Mortax and his traditionalist fleet had attempted to establish their own empire in the Outer Rim, but had run into the same economic problems that had plagued the original Zephyrian Empire. Facing collapse, Mortax had sent a message to the Confederation requesting permission to join as a member world. He had learned, through hard experience, that the humans had been right about the unsustainability of conquest-based civilization. Luke had personally traveled to meet with the former traditionalist leader, and had been moved by the change in the proud military commander. Mortax had admitted that his attempt to maintain the old ways had failed, and that he wanted to learn how to build something better for his people. Today, Mortax served as the Confederation's Director of Frontier Development, using his military expertise to explore new regions of space and establish peaceful contact with previously unknown civilizations. As Luke stood on the observation deck of the Jupiter station, watching ships from across the galaxy coming and going in peaceful commerce, he remembered something Jake Morrison had said during those first tense days of alien contact. "Sometimes the best way to win a conflict is to convince your enemy that they don't want to fight you anymore." Looking out at the thriving interstellar civilization that had grown from that simple philosophy, Luke realized that humanity's greatest export to the galaxy hadn't been technology or military power. It had been the radical idea that former enemies could become friends, that cooperation was stronger than conquest, and that the best way to defend yourself was to make everyone around you prosperous and happy. The aliens had brought a fleet, expecting to find a weak civilization to conquer. Instead, they had found a strong civilization that conquered them with kindness, transformed them with friendship, and ultimately saved them from themselves. And humanity had just smiled and welcomed them home.